Hello there, you're watching the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. It's time to see what's making the headlines with Kevin Maguire and Andrew Pearce. They'll be with us from now until just before midnight. So let's see what's on some of those front pages. The Guardian writes, PM accused of corruption as rules on sleaze torn up. The sleazy way out reads the front of the Metro as MP Owen Paterson avoids suspension. The Eye also leads with the former minister caught lobbying for companies paying him £100,000 a year. The front of the Yorkshire Post follows the fallout of Gary Balance's confession that he used a racial slur against a former Yorkshire teammate. The Telegraph headlines, NHS staff won't have to be jabbed this winter. They say this is despite Christmas lockdown fears. The Financial Times leads with the Federal Reserve saying that it will begin scaling back its $120 billion monthly bond buying programme this month. And The Sun leads with an exclusive on Channel 4 Star's Conundrum. And we're joined tonight by Kevin Maguire and Andrew Pearce. Well, one word across many of the papers, and that is sleaze. Let's start with the Eye. Andrew, with you. Tories rip up Britain's anti-sleaze rules to save guilty MP. Just talk us through what happened today.
It's an extraordinary position for the Conservative Party to find itself in. Owen Paterson, a former cabinet minister, was accused and found guilty, if that's the right word, of an egregious breach of the rules about lobbying. He was found guilty of that by the Parliamentary Commission, a woman called Catherine Stone. Now, a lot of Tories think she's very party-pre and very pro the Labour Party and very anti the Tories. But this was then investigated. Her report was investigated by the Standards Committee, 14 people, 7 lay people, all party. They unanimously found that Owen Paterson had broken those rules and recommended that he be suspended for 30 days. Now, what the Tories have done today, they say they don't like the way the report was reached. They don't think Owen Paterson was given a fair hearing. And so they effectively passed an amendment pausing that suspension of 30 days and setting up a completely new system of investigation. It's a bizarre way to behave. It looks like the perception is that many Tory MPs voted to try to prevent Owen Paterson being suspended. Now, Dame Andrea Leadsom, who tabled the amendment, said that's not what it's about. If he's guilty, if the new committee finds him guilty, he'll have to be suspended. But I'm afraid that's how it looks. It looks like the Tories have changed the rules because they don't like the way they affected one of their own. And it's amazing. Nearly 100 Conservative MPs abstained, and I think 13 or 14 voted against. So this is this is causing a lot of concern on the Tory benches, and a lot of Tory MPs were very unhappy that they were whipped into supporting this amendment because this is a parliamentary matter. This is a House of Commons matter. This shouldn't be something that Number 10 or the whips get involved in. This should be something MPs decide for themselves. It's about the power of the Commons, not the executive, not Number 10 sticking its nose in. It's a very unedifying day, I think, for the Conservatives. Yeah,
3-line whip, but it passed by a narrow majority of just 18, Kevin. What do you make of this? Is this the Tories rewriting the rule book for one of their own?
Well, it feels like that. It's exactly as the Eye say. And Andrew said it's extraordinary, it's bizarre. I mean, it's outrageous, it's contemptuous. And I think Boris Johnson will come to regret what's happened, as will Owen Paterson. But there we are. The Eye, Tories rip up anti-sleeve rules to save guilty MP. The public backlash will be absolutely enormous because people will imagine themselves at work in a situation, somebody's done something wrong, and all of a sudden the boss class changed the rules to protect them. Now, sleaze did for the John Major Conservative government in the 1990s, back to basics and so on, wave after wave, sleazy allegations got hammered. What's changed here is it's Boris Johnson leading the charge against the sleaze. There's been questions raised about his own conduct, not least the finance of his flats redecoration. But here, it does appear as if he is protecting one of his own. And people will not like that, and quite rightly will not like that. I've read the report into Owen Paterson. It's very long, it's very detailed. He gets £82,000 a year as an MP. He wanted another £112,000 from two other jobs. he was lobbying and advocating for those companies, which is not allowed under the rules. It is clearly and absolutely banned, but that is what he was doing. He's refused to accept responsibility for it all the way. Very sadly, his wife took her life. He's claimed the inquiry was partly responsible for that. People are mourning, grieving. It's very difficult to go into that area, but his business dealings were dodgy and they were wrong. And maybe he just can't face up to that and accept it and the consequences of perhaps of what he did. But for the Conservative Party, for Boris Johnson, for the government, the cabinet, to change the rules like this to protect one of their own is absolutely outrageous. Because the only way the system can work is if it has cross-party support. It isn't partisan. Tomorrow, a Labour MP, one of the Leicester Labour MPs, Claudia Webb, will be sentenced after she was convicted of threatening a woman who was a friend of her boyfriend, said to have threatened to throw acid in her face, release embarrassing photographs of this woman to her family. Now, I'm on the left, Andrew's on the right, but I think we would both agree that Claudia Webb is unfit to be an MP, whatever the sentence she is given tomorrow, because of the nature of the crime she is said to have committed and the court found she committed. But Owen Paterson, 30-day suspension, he should have taken it because he clearly breached the rules. And I think this will really boomerang. The backlash will be ferocious on the Conservative Party, and quite rightly.
Let's have a look at the front of the Metro. The sleazy way out is the headline there. Andrew, Owen Paterson's argument, and those who support him, is that he wasn't given a fair hearing. It's about the fairness of the process, something that's been rumbling on for some time. But I just want to pick up on a point that Kevin made, that the Conservatives and that Owen Paterson will come to regret this. And yet tonight, speaking to Sam Coates, he's saying, I would do this all over again. I would act in entirely the same manner again.
Well, look, he says he wasn't breaching the rules. This committee said he was. 14 people, 7 lay, all party. The commissioner did too. And I think he should have done his time. The fact is, after 30 days, that can potentially trigger a recall ballot in the constituency. So if his constituents wanted to, they could demand a by-election. But, you know, I think there would be huge sympathy for Owen Paterson in his constituency. He's been the MP there for a very long time. He's got a good record as an MP there. And there'd be huge sympathy for him over the suicide of his wife, the mother of his children. And I think he'd have won. I don't think it would have even come to a by-election, but I think if there had been one, he'd have probably won it. But the problem is, even if he wasn't given a fair hearing, and that the jury's out on that, the chairman of the committee, Chris Bright, spoke very well in the House today. He wrote a couple of articles in newspapers today, defending the way the committee conducted itself. Look, the Tories are now saying there should be a right of appeal. Well, there hasn't been up until now. And why are they only demanding one now? They're demanding one now because they want Owen Paterson to get that appeal.
And a right to cross-examine witnesses.
Yeah, exactly.
As well.
But I mean, he was interviewed by the committee. He was. So I'm not quite sure how unfair the process was. But it just looks like they want to change the rules to get an appeal in place to save their mate. That's why it looks bad. That's why there's a very unpleasant whiff about this. And these can be very corrosive and very damaging. And Kevin's quite right. I mean, it wasn't just these which did for John Major's government. The government had been in power. The Tories have been in power for 18 years. People would sit to the back teeth of them, including me as a Tory. They had to go. But sleaze can be very difficult. And the last thing the Tory party needs is that charge of sleaze to stick. Because if it sticks, it'll be very hard to get rid of it.
Let's have a look at the Telegraph's angle on this, Kevin. It is quoting Owen Paterson, who's saying that the MP's watchdog must go. His suspension's now on hold, but what about the standard system itself? Is that now on pause?
Well, no, it's been scrapped, hasn't it? It's not MPs, Tory MPs, those who went along with a 3-line whip and backed Owen Paterson, or when the Prime Minister said jump, asked how high. have decided to scrap the existing system, and they want to bring in a new system. But Labour and the SNP won't play ball with it, so you'll have Tory MPs sitting in favour of Tory MPs. Look, if you're a dodgy business or even a legitimate business where you want to hire a Tory MP, now's the time to do it. There we are. They'll all go along. About 112,000 a year is the going rate. They'll ask questions for you, they'll lobby for you, and deny doing it. It's also chaos and a complete mess. The first time this has happened, but there we are. We have Owen Paterson saying the Standards Commissioner has to go now. The Commons authorities are hitting back, saying, no, we've got a contract till 2022. Catherine Storm will stay until then. But the whole, we're just in politics. You need MPs to behave. Most MPs do behave. Whatever their party, they behave, including, bizarrely, most, but not all, of those who backed Owen Paterson from the Conservative Party. They did it either out of sympathy, which I've heard, because his wife took her life. One of the companies paying him £100,000 a year, Randox. It's a diagnostic business. He's getting a lot of money from it, but he was found to have broken the rules over how he represented it, approaching ministers and so on. Well, they also sponsor the Grand National at Aintree, the Randox Grand National. She is the chair of, or was the chair of Aintree. So you could see there would have been tensions there. He's blaming the inquiry. I would say he's got to look at his business arrangements. But there is really no system at all now, and this is just going to be completely and utterly wrong.
OK, we're going to take a short break, but coming up, we are going to have the extraordinary story of the 4-year-old girl found alive more than 2 weeks after she disappeared. Welcome back. You're watching the press preview. With me here are Kevin Maguire and Andrew Pearce. And we're going to continue our look through the papers with the Daily Telegraph. And its headline, NHS staff won't have to be jabbed this winter. A rather different take to what the Eye says, which is NHS staff are told get jab or get out. Winter being the operative word in the Daily Telegraph headline there, Kevin.
Yeah, the discrepancy, the contradiction in the two reports, which way you look at it, it's because the Health Secretary, Sajid Javid, is thought to be about to announce that NHS staff will be required to be jabbed, but not until next April. So the Telegraph take the view that means we will go through the winter, and there's about 90% jabbing rate in the NHS, but in England, where there's 1.2 million NHS staff, that means 120,000 or so won't be. There are concentrations in various parts of the country where the rate is lower than 90%. London and Birmingham are mentioned because they have a higher proportion of staff from ethnic heritages who are suspicious, sometimes for very good reason, from where their parents or grandparents were hesitant about being jabbed. So it is an issue. But if they're going to be moved into back office roles away from frontline NHS, you're going to create huge problems. And I would have thought, rather like the care system, where there's about 60,000 carers thought not to have been jabbed, and there's a November the 11th cut-off there, probably much better to require them to take daily tests than to try and push them out of their jobs, because otherwise the NHS or the care system, which are already under considerable pressure, will just break down.
Andrew, I'm going to get you to talk about the Metro, which is this incredible story of Cleo Smith, 4-year-old, who disappeared for 18 days in Australia and last night found safe and well.
It's just so heartwarming, isn't it? Because criminologists will tell you it's unusual for a child who's been missing that long to be reunited with their family. This was 18 days. She went missing from a campsite. They found her, the police, in a house in her parents' hometown, Carnarvon. A 36-year-old man's been arrested. But look at her. What a great, bonny little child. There she is with her great big lollipop. Her parents put on Instagram, "Our family's complete." The whole of Australia had been gripped by the disappearance of this little girl. The Australian Prime Minister has been talking about it today, how fantastic and what a great sense of relief it is. And you instantly think, don't you, about Madeleine McCann and her parents, the hope that they've already, a source close to that family has said how thrilled they are for her family that they found the little girl, and how it gives them great hope that one day they may find Madeleine. So it's a wonderful story. Well done to the police for finding her. We're not quite sure how they got tipped off that she was in this house, but she's safe, she's well, and children are very robust, and she looked like she was enjoying all the attention.
Yeah, and the police themselves in tears as they rescued her. One very quick word from you on this, Kevin, before we're out of time.
Yeah, no, look, as Andrew said, he mentioned Madeleine McCann or the parents of Ben Needham or countless hundreds, thousands of children who've been lost. On the front of the Metro, they'd said, back from the dead. Look, parents never, ever give up hope. Unfortunately, too many of them never have the happy ending, but this does look like a very happy ending. And you're just emotionally caught up in it.
Yeah, and the smile on her face as lying in that hospital bed, really wonderful to see little Cleo Smith found and returned to her parents.